Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you guys once again for joining the 9 Innings Podcast hosted by yours truly, Kevin Thompson, founder and CEO of 99 Capital Group. Thank you guys for joining us. As I always say, subscribe to this channel. As I always say, go and get my book, MLB to CFP, live on Apple and Amazon. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can email us at info@99capitalgroup.com. Send us your questions. Go to the website at www.99capitalgroup.com. Schedule an appointment and follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook at MLB to CFP Live. As you know, we're here to do what? Educate, empower, engage. And today we have Chuck Failla, founder of Sovereign Financial Group, host of the GoRIA Podcast. And today we're here to talk about PINOs. Who are they? And it's going to be a blast. We're coming to get you. Let's get it. Guys, I'm on here with Chuck Failla. Already did the introduction. No introductions really needed. This guy, if you're in the wild west, you'll see wanted posters everywhere of this guy because they call him broker dealer enemy number one. Chuck, let's just start right there. First of all, thanks for joining the podcast. Thank you for giving us some time. This is gonna be fun. This is gonna be fun.
Without question. Kevin, thank you very much. And thank you for everything you're doing in the industry as well. You are all over social media. Your message is loud and clear. And I love what you're doing. So this is a pleasure for me to be here for sure.
Absolutely. Well, let's just start here. So you and I have had our debates in the past around the fiduciary standard, right? And again, like I've always said, I am not against the fiduciary standard as it is. I'm against further regulation, right? I'm not against the fiduciary standard. I wish there was an ultimate standard across the field where everybody had to adhere to it. But I'm just against this further regulation. And I love what you're doing because you're really parsing through what we call the PINOs. The PINOs out there, the planners in name only. And we're going to dig deep into that right now. But let's just start here. We talk about you being broker dealer enemy number one. What drives your passion for the avocation of the fiduciary standard?
Sure. So what you're referring to actually is earlier or later last year, it was in the middle of the year somewhere. Investment News did a really flattering 2-page spread, I guess, featuring yours truly. And they had like this old fashioned wanted poster from like the Wild West. And they billed me as public enemy number one for broker dealers.
Yeah.
And a large part of that is because I started this media franchise called GoRIA.com. About 2 years ago, I partnered with Investment News. So it's GoRIA, fueled, of course, by Investment News. And that's been a great partnership. And what we talk about are the benefits of going RIA. Now, as I said many, many times, and you know this is not so much an anti-broker-dealer thing, right? Broker-dealers have a very real, important, and good role to play.
Okay.
But it is more for delivering product and not advice. And I'll take that to the grave and I'll defend that to the nth degree. And here's what I mean by this. And I was talking to someone just recently about this because I talk about this quite a bit. Just use my cough button there.
No worries.
So I just recently bought a car, for the family. We bought a Yukon. Great car. It's awesome. So here's the deal. You go into a Yukon, or in this case, it's a GMC dealership. I absolutely positively do not expect that GMC salesperson to tell me how great the Audi crossover is. I don't expect that to happen. What I do expect is for that car salesperson to tell me the truthful, good things about that Yukon. And in this particular case, he sure did. Now, if I want to look at other cars, I'm going to go to those showrooms and have those product pushers. And I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. They're pushing product. You talk to a car salesperson, they are pushing product. And that's okay. Because I know that they want me to walk out with that car, not the other dealership's car. All good. However, before I make a decision, I'm going to go to Consumer Reports, right? Which is still around. It was real popular when I was much younger, but it's still around and kicking. And they are essentially a good analogy for what RIAs do. They are not investment advisors, of course, but they sell advice for a fee. Subscribe, that's the only money they collect. And they're going to tell you what they think is good and bad about the Yukon and what's good and bad about, the Audi, the good and bad about XYZ. Now, consumers understand that. Consumers know when they go into a GMC dealership, they know they're going to hear nothing but good things about GMCs and not a whole lot of good things about other alternatives. They know that. And consumers know if they want real advice, they're going to go to something like Consumer Reports or to chat rooms, perhaps, God forbid, for investment advice. I know you have some thoughts on that too, and I agree with them. But you see what I'm saying? There's a very real delineation between sales and advice. We don't have that in our industry, and I think that's a problem.
Well, that goes down to our next segment, which is talking about PINOs, right? Planners in name only. I was a part of that for a decade, right? I was asked to build an investment arm for an insurance company. I'm not going to name any names, but their philosophy is insurance full, insurance first, insurance for life, something to that effect. Like everything was about insurance, right?
Yeah.
And their whole planning philosophy started with the insurance piece. We got to get them full protection. And then everything else builds off of that. So I know you've seen it. I know you see it on social media. Planners in name only, where their first and foremost purpose is just to sell a life insurance product to basically build an investment arm or quote unquote a financial plan around it. From a fiduciary perspective, we argue about the best interest and the fiduciary standard. And I know they just came out and said, we're not going to go with the best interest practice because they're pushing it back. What are some of your thoughts around that right now? Like, is the insurance company just trying to kick the can down the road till everybody just gives up? That's my question.
Yeah. But let me give you some more color than that. So there's always a vested interest somewhere, right? And the expression is, follow the money.
Yeah.
One of the biggest lobbying groups against the fiduciary standard are the insurance companies, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't want that, and for perhaps good reason. And this is not to say insurance is bad. Man, people need insurance without question. I have all the insurance, but people don't need more insurance than they should have. That's the problem. And you were touching upon this, and I love how authentic you are with this and how honest you are with this. The insurance industry, what's the expression? If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Everything's a nail.
Everything's a nail.
Yeah.
You want to save for college? No problem. Whole life insurance. Retirement? No problem. Whole life insurance. What do they call that? Infinite banking. One bank. Life insurance.
Hey, Chuck, you heard this before. 401ks are bad.
Insurance. Oh my God, they're evil. Why would you want a 401k when you can have whole life insurance? So we're on the same page with that.
Yeah.
And look, there's a reason for insurance to be there. It's an important thing to have, but it shouldn't be the solution for everything. It tends to be the most expensive financial product out there. It is usually the financial product that has the highest level of commission paid, and that creates a lot of dangerous bias. So all I'm asking for is not the outlaw of insurance or insurance brokers or the outlaw of broker dealers or registered reps, but let's be clear on who's doing what. Let the consumer have a chance to know who is truly a product person, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with a car salesperson, but the consumer needs to know that I'm talking to an insurance salesperson, but then let the consumer understand who is really a planner. So, and I think you may know this, I actually coined that term PINO about a year ago at an FPA conference.
Yes, you did.
And I love acronyms because acronyms do, I think, a really great job in piercing through the white noise. And when you say PINO, and it's starting to catch on, which I love that, planner and name only, it helps consumers understand to ask the question, am I working with a real planner or planner and name only? And I think that's critical.
And I love what you say there because I was talking to somebody recently and I was saying, you won't believe the noise on social media right now. I couldn't imagine if I was trying to parse through, I want to get a financial planner. Well, let's go to the social media threads. And then everybody's an expert on social media. I mean, I went and I corrected an individual on social media. My first mistake. I shouldn't have done that. But I corrected an individual about a Roth mistake that she made. And she comes back to me and says, excuse me, I am a financial expert. So me and my sleuth, I put my sleuth hat on and I said, okay, I'm going to go to broker check. I'm going to go to IAPD. I'm going to go, I'm going to go, I'm going to go. Nothing to be found. This girl hasn't even been even touched the industry, but she calls herself a financial expert. And guess what? She has tens of thousands of followers.
Yeah. So there you have it, right? If it's on TikTok, it's got to be true. And that is so dangerous for financial reasons, for political reasons, so much danger with following social media. And I find myself fact checking so many things. You see it on social media, you're like, that sounds pretty outlandish, and you try to fact check it. So, but for financial advice, it's so easy for anyone to call themselves a financial expert because it's not regulated at all. But again, people need to understand to ask the questions, where they're getting information from, whether it's financial, political, legal, anything. Make sure it's someone that is really qualified to give you that information. And my gosh, and I love TikTok. I love those funny cat videos, that cat that's driving around wrecking havoc. Love it. I think that guy is hysterical. But it's not where I want to get any of my real information from. It's just not.
So back to broker dealer, you're enemy number one. Like, what kind of pushback have you received from the broker dealer side of the fence? Have you been getting any hate mail or anything like that? Like, what kind of pushback are you getting?
Well, let's just say if I receive any packages at the office from Merrill Lynch, I'm like, is this thing ticking? I'm not sure. No, actually not at all, because they really, I think, have heard the full statement. And let me tell you something. You know who some of the biggest RIAs will be in 10 years? And you heard it here first. It's going to be the large wirehouses.
No, I got you. Yeah.
Those guys are moving about as fast toward fiduciary type accounts than any other entity. They have so many assets under management, and they see the handwriting on the wall. And what would perhaps slow down that progress? Well, as always, follow the money. It's economics. So if you look at any of these larger firms, the most profitable accounts tend to be the non-fiduciary accounts with those big, fat, juicy commissions, right? The fee-based accounts tend to have less revenue, at least at first, but over time, that's the other nice thing. Over time, it's going to be just as economically viable. But these broker-dealers maybe are not rushing to go all in on the fiduciary space, but they will be. And I think what you're going to have, let's say in 10 years, you're going to have these large wirehouses being some of the biggest RIAs out there, or not technically RIAs, but have the largest number of fiduciary accounts of almost any other industry, if they're going to be around. But then you will still have broker-dealers. If I may, where I think broker-dealers fit in beautifully are for sophisticated do-it-yourself investors, right? If I'm a sophisticated investor, I don't need to pay for advice. I want to pay for product selection, execution, and product information. That's broker-dealer all day long, and that's a very real value that they can deliver to the community.
Yeah, broker-dealers have a tendency to remove the barriers of entry, right? They'll come in, sometimes they'll prop guys up with a base salary where you can kind of go out and do your own thing. I know they're taking the back end from you, of course, but they're needed to a degree. But one thing I do notice is that there's a tendency to allow just like everybody to join the industry. Like, hey, just come and try this out. And it's just it's just the spaghetti against the wall. And they're like, you didn't make it, you didn't make it, you didn't make it. And then you end up very similar to a multi-level marketing company. And like Absolutely. I said before, I've been in there where I sat there like, hey, yeah, we're going to go ahead and recruit some people to come in. And you see all these people come in, you're like, what? You're just picking up anybody. And the next thing you know, they may do one or two insurance policies or whatever, one or two accounts, and then they're gone. And now I inherit some accounts, and I'm like, this is becoming multi-level marketing, and that's why I went, no thanks, no thanks for this industry. That's why I saw that going. But here's my next question for you.
Yeah,
popular GoRIA podcast talks about independence. What are some of the biggest barriers you're seeing when people start to move towards independence, and some of the things that they need to know as they make that transition?
Sure. So interesting. I think there's the perceived and then the real barriers, right? So the perceived barrier is, like with anything, the fear of the unknown. That's starting to really diminish, because I tell you what, I don't know if there's any registered rep in the broker-dealer world today that doesn't know at least one or a dozen of their friends that have gone RIA.
100%. Yeah.
So it's not like, hey, I've heard of this RIA thing. What's that all about? Right? If you're going back 20 years, well, I've heard of it 10 years ago. It sounds familiar, rings a bell today. I don't think there's one registered rep at a broker dealer that doesn't have one or many friends that have already gone RIA. So they're telling them, come on in, the water is great.
Yeah.
But here's the biggest barrier is to figure out how to go RIA, because there really is a couple of ways, really. And I guess there's some nuances if you want to talk about that. But for all intents and purposes, there's two. Build your own or tuck in, right? Those are the two ways to go. So the first thing, know who you are, right? If you're someone that loves the business side of the business, as I do, like I love putting together business systems and the technology and integrating the APIs. I really like that stuff.
Gotcha.
So for me, the only solution was to build my own. But if you don't like that, there's a lot of great options to tuck in, right? And here's the beauty of the RIA space. And here's how I like to explain this. If you wanted to go to a wirehouse, you have, a handful of good choices if you want that wirehouse experience.
Exactly.
If you wanted to go IBD, the independent broker dealer route, you have a dozen really good choices to look at if that's the experience you want. But if you want to go RIA and you don't want to build it, you have hundreds of really good RIA choices to plug into. And that's the beauty of the space. And what's nice about that, to use sort of a suit analogy, you could go in and find a suit that's almost perfect, and you could tailor it, and it's almost exactly what you would have gotten had you built your own. That's how many good choices there are today. But here's the real caveat. If I could share with you just one last thing on this.
Go ahead.
The one thing that people miss, and it's a small percentage, but I've seen it firsthand. The RIA space is known for owning your book of business, right? That's kind of its calling card. Not always. If you sign a deal and you sign away your livelihood or your book of business, I think that's one and the same. Then hopefully you got a nice check, and that's that.
Yeah.
Not for me. Most people I think that go into the RIA space want that true, I'm independent, I'll stay as long as I'm happy, I get to leave if I can. And that's how most RIAs are set up. However, and I saw this firsthand once, and I've heard about it a few more times, there was an instance where there was this IAR, right, at another RIA, and he wasn't really satisfied with what was happening there. It was getting a little bit too big, and he wanted that more of a boutique feel, and frankly, he wanted to join our shop at Sovereign. I was like, fantastic. And this big behemoth RIA that he was with said, absolutely, you are free to go. This is your book of business, but you can't stay at the same custodian that I shared.
I think I know who you're talking about, by the way.
Yeah,
I'm not going to mention any names.
Let's protect the supposedly innocent. Yeah. But that's a really interesting thing. So yeah, I own my book of business, but do you really own it if you can't stay at the custodian that you already repapered 300 accounts to, 1,000 accounts to, whatever it is? So that's kind of an unseen thing. And I speak with a lot of advisors, and I say, look, make sure you get that in writing, that if you want that true independence, that also means if you wish to start your own RIA, staying at that custodian, or going to another RIA, staying at that same custodian, because who wants to repaper twice? No one.
One thing I'll notice about the IBD space, what they told me, you don't understand how hard it is out there, Kevin. The water's too deep. The compliance side. Oh my God, the compliance side. You just don't understand how difficult the compliance is. I just had my first audit. It went through pretty smoothly. I was like, man, these people were scaring me for no reason. But there's two things I'll say about the IBD spaces. One is that you're either going to be on the lower end where you're not making much money. You're just coming in the business and you're not making much what we call gross dealer concession. And you could move, but it's just not feasible for you because you don't have the money to make it operate. Or two, you're just fat and happy. And it's like, I got a great payout here. I can force my way to do certain things because they're gonna bend to my whims. And I just don't want to move. I got fat trails coming in. I'm making 8, 9, maybe $1 million a year. Why do I want to do all this other stuff? Because I don't want the headache. Let them have that.
Sure.
But there's that person in between, which I was, the $250,000 to $500,000 producer. That's when you start really saying, okay, either I'm going to make the jump or I'm going to be in this industry for the rest of my life in this capacity. Those are the people that really need to start thinking, does it make sense? And of course, like you just mentioned, do you want to be a business owner or do you want to be in a tuck-in? Very, very important. Because most people don't realize this. Once they come over here, They think they want to be a business owner, and they're saying, you know what, I didn't want to sign up for this. I just want to kind of tuck
Yeah.
in under somebody, and that makes it a lot easier for a lot of people when they make the transition.
We're seeing a lot of that actually. So even at our shop, we're seeing some folks that started their own RIAs. They're like, wow, it's not impossible, but you have to want that side of the business. And they're like, you know what, I want to go back to just being an advisor. And then they're looking for tuck-in solutions. But one thing I'll maybe expand upon with what you just said, which I fully agree with, those larger advisors, where they really need to focus on, and I don't think a lot of them understand this as well as maybe they can or should, is the end game.
Yeah.
At some point, you are not going to be running your business because you're either going to retire or die. Now, I'm not sure if you're going to retire, but I promise you at some point you're going to die, right? So one way or another, you will stop running that book of business. What's going to happen to that? Because those things are valuable, right? Option one, do you have a child that wants to get into the business? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Option two is usually what's going to happen is you're going to sell that book to someone else. And without question, I don't care where you are, your book of business is much more valuable in the RIA space than it is at any broker dealer, period, full stop. I challenge anyone to push back on that. You can't. Mm-hmm. So even if you're not worried about squeaking out another 10 or 20%, and frankly, you probably could, right? There's a whole concept I love to talk about, which is true net payout. Yeah. You know, these IBD advisors, I'm getting a 92% payout. Spoiler alert, you're not. And there's a lot of reason why we could say this. And there's a lot of hidden fees, both you and your clients are absorbing. Mm-hmm. But let's say you don't want to squeak out another 20, 30%. Who wouldn't? But let's say you don't. How about another 3 or 4 turns on that payout, right? That multiple. Instead of 1 or 2 times, how about 5, 10, 15 times multiple on your final swan song? That's going to get anyone's attention. And when you put a 10x versus a 3x on $1 million book, that's real money.
Yeah. That's life-changing money.
Yeah.
A couple more questions real quick. So we talked about PINOs, the phrase that you've invented, and I'm going to give you that. Maybe to patent that thing. Give me, hey, by the way, patent it. Send us some t-shirts, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Say no to PINOs. We're actually in the process of registering that right now, in fact.
By the way, I'm going to buy one. I'm right on the first one coming in line. But how should fiduciaries separate themselves and stand out differently than the people that quote unquote are the PINOs? Like what could we do outside of just regulatory matters? Is it doing stuff like this? Is it, hey, letting our clients know this is the difference? Like what are you guys doing to let your clients know that there's a difference out there?
Yeah, well, it's really more toward the prospective client, right? Because our clients really have heard this a lot from us. So whenever we have a prospective client, one of the things we educate them on is what is a fiduciary and that we are a fiduciary. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean? And here's the deal. Any consumer that understands that, right? And not everyone does. In fact, very few, I think, do. But once a consumer understands the difference between a fiduciary and a non-fiduciary, one, and two, they're looking for advice. They're not just a sophisticated person looking for a product because they could just go directly to XYZ broker dealer and do that. But if they're looking for advice and they understand the difference between a fiduciary or not a fiduciary, it's no longer a question. Now, they may not choose to work with us, but I promise you, once they understand that, they're only going to work with a fiduciary.
So having a firm understanding of what a fiduciary does, what a fiduciary is, and the liability around a fiduciary standard versus, hey, you check the box, KYC was done, you signed for this, hands are off. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times. I know you've seen this. It could be 3 or 4 years down the line. A client comes in, oh, I lost my job. I need to go ahead and blow up this variable annuity. I need to go in and blow up this life insurance policy because I can no longer fund it. Oh, my. You're giving me nightmares, Chuck. Stop, man.
That's my goal here, Kevin. Living your dreams.
I'm telling you, I get so worked up about this stuff because you know what's happening. You know the threads in LinkedIn and people are battling about fee only, fee based, and commission, and you need this, and you just get so overstimulated, and you just want to just lash out and just start typing in capital letters. You know, I'm just trying to kind of woo-saw a little bit. Last question. What's next for you, my man? Any big projects coming in 2025 for the initiative? I know you have a real big initiative of pushing the fiduciary standard forward and GoRIA Podcast as well. Yeah. What things do you have coming down the pike?
Sure. So as it relates to the fiduciary, at some point, and I don't know if this is a this year thing, because internally at Sovereign, we're working on some fairly major technology improvements.
Mm-hmm.
Once that's done, then I'll have some mind space back. But I do want to do either a podcast or I might do a book, something along the lines of say no to PINOs. And I think that's going to be really important. But one thing I will share that I'm actually really excited about that has nothing to do with me or Sovereign, and that's the CFP board. And you probably saw this. They recently put together a letter to NASAA, right, which is the North American Securities Administrators Association, right? And what I loved about this, it wasn't the CFP board. It was the CFP board with FPA, with NAPFA. I don't know that that's ever happened. Maybe it has. I've never seen that. So what you have here are three powerhouse organizations that are all about consumer protection. But they decided to say, okay, let's put down our fiefdoms for just a moment and let's work together. That was the most encouraging thing I have seen in a long time to really get what we really need, which is title protection, which means if you're an advisor, you can call yourself an advisor. But if you're really not an advisor, that's cool. We're okay with that, but don't call yourself an advisor. And if that happens, that will be monumental. So in whatever way I can be helpful, putting a spotlight on that, that is what I'll be spending my time on this year for sure. Because I love that you have these three organizations, CFP board, FPA, NAPFA, together petitioning, do they go by NASA? NASA?
I don't know.
Because I know
NASA,
that's a space one.
Sounds like
it
a
looks
space
like it would
program.
be. But it's not NASA the space. It's NASA,
just kidding with
North
you.
American Securities Administrators Association. But that was incredibly powerful. And if we can get title protection to help consumers know the difference between a planner and a PINO, I'd be happy with that. And in whatever way I can help put a spotlight on that, that's what I'm going to do.
I love that. There's two things I want to do. One, I want to figure out, just like we have the check boxes or the blue checks on Twitter, why can't we have those same check boxes for a person that is certified in the industry that they're in? They're saying, hey, is this person certified? Yes or no? Do they show up on broker check or whatever? Check. And that'll be a lot easier for us to say, oh, this person has a checkbox by his name. This person does not. I think they should start doing that. I can't go out there and proclaim to be a medical professional. That'll be a problem. I can't go out there and proclaim to be an attorney. That could be a problem, right? So why is it? And you kind of made a like an analogy about the car salesman. Why are we down there with car salesmen, right? Is because
that's right.
There's so many people out there that are proclaiming to be professionals in this industry. And lastly, I do believe in title protection. I 100% agree with that. But I also think we need to just tell me, stop with all the designations. I mean, God, really, at this point, this is, in my opinion, I think a lot of it's becoming a money grab. I think there's a lot of redundancies in this place. I'm like, God, Lee, man, I'm a CHFC, CLU, CCCC, NAACP, all this other stuff out there. You get so tired of it, and I think that there needs to be a place for the consumer to say, what does all this mean?
And amen to that. And then you could have that blue checkbox, right? And to your point, we are the only industry where we can give incredibly consequential advice and not necessarily be even registered. That's insane. So hopefully, NASA and CFP and all those other guys getting together will make that happen. And look, the CFP probably is the leading contender if we're going to have one designation to rule them all, to use kind of a Lord of the Rings type of thing. And that's fine with me. I happen to be a CFP. I do think it's probably the gold standard for designations. Mm-hmm. And if we're going to have one that is the title protected one, let's have it be that. Keep it simple. They already have the infrastructure to do so, but we do need a government agency to ultimately bless whatever it is, the CFP mark or whatever, the same way it would be for MD or attorney. You're either an attorney or you're not. You're a doctor or you're not. You're a financial advisor or you're not.
100%, my friend. Charles, Chuck Failla, thank you for doing the 90s podcast, my friend. Thank you for giving us this breadth of knowledge. I love it. You and I have had our differences in the past, but they've always been leading to clarity and leading to moving forward, and I appreciate it. Any last words? Any last words for the community?
No, that really is it. I think we covered a lot of information here, and to the community, and I know you have a great, strong following here. whatever we could do online to point out the weak links. And I do believe they're in the minority, but they should be none. So if you see a PINO, say something. Or what is that expression? If you see something, say something. I know Andy Panko does it all the time. He does a great job with that. Talk about public enemy number one. He is probably PINO's public enemy number one. But do more of that as a group, because I do believe 95% of us are absolutely doing the right thing, like you are, like I am, so many people are. But those 5% are giving us a black eye. Let's get them out of the business.
Chuck Failla, Sovereign Financial Group, host of the GoRIA Podcast. Thank you for joining the 90s podcast, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
You bet. Kevin, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Guys, we just had Chuck Failla of Sovereign Financial Group on the call today, host of the GoRIA Podcast. Say no to PINOs is the name of this episode, because we talked about the fiduciary standard. We talked about the reasons why it's important, and we talked about the reasons why there needs to be a standard once and for all for title protection. Now, I'm not for further regulation, but I am for title protection. Let's just get that clear. But Chuck is such a wonderful individual, and I appreciate having him on the call today. Again, subscribe to this channel. Go and get my book, MIB to CFP, live on Apple and Amazon. You have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can email us at info@nineeyecapitalgroup.com. Send us your questions. Go to the website at www.nineeyecapitalgroup.com. Schedule an appointment. As you know, we're here to do what? Educate, empower, and engage, and also entertain. And today we had Mr. Chuck Failla on the call today talking about saying no to PINOs. Thank you guys for joining us. Stay humble, stay safe, my friend. I'll see you again soon.